The movie begins with Marlo, who is heavily pregnant with an unplanned third child with her husband Drew. They already have an 8-year-old daughter named Sarah and a 5-year-old son named Jonah. Jonah struggles with frequent meltdowns, anxiety, and sensory sensitivities, making everyday routines especially difficult for the family. To help reduce Jonah's sensitivity to external stimuli, Marlo follows a nightly routine of brushing his skin with a special brush. Later, Marlo reminds Drew that they're going to her brother's house for dinner the following evening. He is extremely wealthy, and Drew thinks her brother hates him because he is poor. Marlo reassures him that everything will be fine, joking that her brother is probably just eager to show off his new G-Wagon, and then they proceed to mock him. The next morning, Marlo struggles to get the kids ready and out of the house, with Jonah once again making everything more difficult. When they arrive at school, Marlo tries to park in a different lot because the one they normally use is full, but Jonah starts screaming and kicking the seat, insisting that they park in the usual lot. His meltdown becomes so intense that Marlo eventually gives in and waits for a spot to open. When Marlo finally meets with Jonah's principal, she apologizes for being late and listens as the woman explains that Jonah is having a difficult time adjusting to kindergarten. She carefully describes him as quirky and says that because he needs so much of the teacher's attention, it isn't fair to the other children. The school suggests getting Jonah a one-on-one aide who can stay with him throughout the day and give him the extra support he needs. At first, Marlo is relieved that the school is willing to help Jonah, but that relief quickly disappears when she learns that the school doesn't provide the aid and that she and Drew would have to hire and pay for one themselves. Knowing they can't afford it right now, Marlo simply says she'll figure something out, then leaves the office devastated. After dropping the kids off at school, Marlo stops at a local cafe. While she is sitting with her latte and muffin, an old friend recognizes her. Both women are genuinely shocked to see each other. The woman asks Marlo what she's been doing all these years, and Marlo simply tells her that she lives in town, is still married to Drew, and has 2 children. She doesn't really have much else to say about her life. The woman then tells her that she still has the same phone number, lives at the same address in Bushwick, and to call her sometime if she feels like it. That evening, Marlo and her family head over to her brother and his wife's enormous house for dinner. Craig and Elise live in a huge mansion, have 3 children, a nanny, and enough money to make everything look effortless. Elise tries to make Marlo feel good about herself by telling her that she is glowing. Marlo looks exhausted and jokes that she feels more like an abandoned trash barge. The conversation turns to the baby, with the wife asking when Marlo is due. Marlo says the baby is expected at any moment. Everyone treats the pregnancy like an exciting little surprise, but Marlo can barely muster enthusiasm because she is already overwhelmed by everything waiting for her at home. Then the conversation shifts to Jonah, and Marlo's mood changes again. Elise mentions that they really have their hands full with him, quickly adding that she doesn't mean it negatively and that he's a great kid. Drew admits that the school wants them to get Jonah an aide because his behavior is becoming too difficult for the teacher to manage. Elise tries to put a positive spin on it, saying that it's good the school recognizes Jonah's needs, but Marlo can hear the judgment underneath the reassurance. Later, her brother tells her he wants to show her something. He leads her into his extravagant Tahiti-themed home bar. He then tells her that he has a special baby gift for her this time. Then he explains that he wants to give her a night nanny. Craig describes how a night nanny comes to the house after the parents go to bed and takes care of the newborn through the night. She can stay for several weeks or even months, allowing the parents to actually get some sleep. Marlo is skeptical. To her, paying someone to take care of a newborn while she sleeps feels like an unnecessary luxury. She argues that if you have a baby, you're supposed to deal with the sleepless nights yourself. She also doesn't like the idea of a stranger coming into her home and bonding with her newborn while she's asleep. But then Craig stops joking and explains why he's really pushing the idea. He knows this baby wasn't planned, and he knows Marlo already has more on her plate than she can handle. He doesn't want to see her end up the way she did the last time she had a baby. He reminds her that Drew's career is finally moving forward, while Marlo still needs to get Sarah and Jonah to school every morning and be present for them, especially Jonah. Craig tells her that he grew up in the same struggling household as Marlo, so he understands where she's coming from. He simply wants his sister to have some help before she completely burns herself out. He gives her the nanny's number and tells her she can use her for as long as she needs. Marlo still isn't convinced. As she and Drew drive home, she complains that the whole idea feels ridiculous, comparing it to something out of a period drama. But Drew actually likes the idea. He points out that not having to wake up 5 times every night sounds pretty amazing. Marlo reminds him that he doesn't wake up anyway, and then insists that she will be fine handling the baby herself. That night, as Marlo goes to sleep, she finds herself underwater, swimming through a strange, dreamlike world. When she wakes up, she realizes her water has broken. She wakes Drew, and the two of them head to the hospital. After arriving, Marlo goes through labor and eventually gives birth to a healthy baby girl they name Mia. And things become even more overwhelming for Marlo. She is now responsible for a newborn on top of Sarah and Jonah, and the exhaustion quickly starts wearing her down. Mia cries constantly, Marlo barely gets any sleep, and the house becomes increasingly chaotic. Drew is there, but he isn't much help with the baby, leaving Marlo to handle most of the work herself. She becomes so sleep-deprived that she starts looking completely disconnected from her surroundings. Not long after Mia is born, Marlo has to return to Jonah's school for another meeting with the principal. Marlo explains that they are getting Jonah the aid the school recommended. They just haven't figured out how they are going to pay for it yet. The principal tells her that she understands, but then explains that the school has been reconsidering whether it is actually the right environment for Jonah. She reminds Marlo that they had concerns about him even when the family first applied, but ultimately accepted him because they loved Marlo's family and had a good relationship with her brother and his wife. Marlo tells the principal that she knows Jonah was only admitted because her brother and his wife are major donors and that they called in a favor to get Jonah into the school in the first place. The principal eventually tells Marlo that there are other schools that are better suited to kids like Jonah. That is when Marlo completely loses her patience. She asks the woman what she means by kids like Jonah, and when the principal once again calls him quirky, Marlo finally snaps. She demands that the principal just say what she really means. Marlo believes the school thinks Jonah is retarded and that he is ruining the classroom experience for the other children. Then she storms out of the office with Mia. Once she gets back into the car, Mia starts screaming. Marlo sits there completely drained and finally reaches into her belongings and pulls the night nanny's phone number. That night, Tully, the night nanny Craig recommended, arrives at Marlo's house and seems very comfortable taking charge. Marlo is surprised by how young Tully looks, but Tully assures her that she's older than she appears and that she's here to take care of both her and the baby. Then, instead of asking Marlo to explain every little thing about Mia, Tully checks that the baby has diapers and a place to sleep and tells Marlo to go upstairs and get some rest. She will stay downstairs with Mia and wake Marlo whenever the baby needs to be fed. Marlo heads upstairs and finds Drew in bed playing video games. She tells him that the night nanny has arrived. He is surprised that Marlo is really going to leave the baby downstairs with a stranger, but Marlo decides to trust her and climbs into bed. The next morning, Marlo wakes up feeling dramatically different. Instead of being greeted by the usual disaster downstairs, she discovers that Tully has cleaned and organized the house during the night. She tells Drew everything Tully managed to accomplish while they were sleeping and realizes just how much the extra help has already changed her life. She tells Drew that she wants to keep Tully around. Tully continues coming to the house every night, and before long, the awkwardness between her and Marlo starts to disappear. Tully is strangely comfortable around Marlo, and the two begin having random conversations late at night while Mia sleeps. One day, Marlo admits that she feels like she's failing as a mother because she never has the time or energy to do the things other mothers seem to manage so easily. She mentions that she's supposed to bake cupcakes for Jonah's class, but hasn't done it. The next morning, Marlo discovers that Tully has baked a whole batch of cupcakes for Jonah's class. Marlo proudly brings the cupcakes to school and even stops by the principal's office to apologize. Then she offers the principal one of Tully's cupcakes as a peace offering. And Marlo doesn't stop there. She starts looking into the resources available to Jonah and discovers that public schools can provide occupational therapy for children who qualify. She starts cooking proper meals for the family again. She spends more time with Sarah and Jonah and actually seems to enjoy being around her family. With Marlo finally getting some sleep and feeling more like herself, she becomes aware of how distant she and Drew have become as a couple. During one of her late-night conversations with Tully, Marlo admits that Drew has a particular fantasy involving diner waitresses. Marlo reveals that she actually bought one of those diner uniforms a long time ago, but she never got around to wearing it. Tully sees an opportunity to help Marlo reconnect with her husband. She suggests that they use the uniform, and Marlo agrees to let Tully wear instead. When Marlo sees her wearing the outfit, she gives her some instructions on how to play the part. Together, they sneak upstairs while Drew is already asleep. Tully wakes Drew and plays along with the diner waitress fantasy, while Marlo stays nearby and guides her through what Drew likes. The following morning, Marlo and Drew are both slightly embarrassed as they sit together over coffee. They acknowledge that the night before was definitely unexpected, but Drew admits that he enjoyed it and wonders why they never tried something like that before. One night, Tully arrives for her shift looking unusually upset. Marlo notices that something is wrong, and Tully explains that she has been fighting with her roommate. Their relationship is extremely close and almost enmeshed, and the roommate has become angry because Tully keeps bringing men home. Marlo listens and tries to give her some perspective, telling her that she needs to be kind to her roommate because women don't simply get over heartbreak. Instead of settling down for the night, Tully suggests that they go into the city for drinks. Marlo is reluctant at first, but Tully manages to convince her. The two of them leave the house together and drive back toward Marlo's old neighborhood in Bushwick. They end up at a bar, but then Tully tells Marlo that she can't work for her anymore. She explains that she was only meant to be there temporarily and that she came into Marlo's life to bridge a gap, and it's time for her to leave. Marlo tells Tully that she needs her and begs her not to leave, and becomes very emotional and angry. She accuses Tully of being immature and says she doesn't understand what is waiting for her as she gets older. Instead of going home, Marlo suddenly decides she wants to revisit the life she had before. She steals a bicycle and rides through the streets toward the apartment where her old friend used to live. She arrives there, but when she reaches the door, nobody answers. Tully suggests that maybe they're taking things too far and that they should go home. Eventually, the two women begin making their way home. Marlo is exhausted from everything that has happened and starts drifting off as she drives. Then Marlo falls asleep at the wheel. The car suddenly veers off the road and crashes into a river. The vehicle sinks beneath the surface, trapping both women inside as water rushes in. As the car disappears deeper underwater, Marlo sees Tully transformed into the same mysterious mermaid from her earlier dreams. Tully swims toward her through the dark water and leads her out of the sinking vehicle, rescuing her from the wreckage. After the crash, Marlo is taken to the hospital, where doctors examine her and determine that she has been suffering from extreme sleep deprivation and exhaustion. When a psychiatrist speaks with Drew, he is shocked by how little he actually knows about what has been happening to his wife, especially at night. Drew explains that Marlo had been using a night nanny, but he knows very little about the woman. When a psychiatrist asks for Marlo's maiden name, Drew gives him the name Tully. As the doctors piece together what happened, the movie begins showing flashbacks of the nights Marlo supposedly spent with Tully. And Tully is nowhere to be seen. Marlo was actually alone the entire time. The conversations between them, the nights spent cleaning the house, baking cupcakes, cooking, drinking sangria, going out into the city, and even the bizarre events leading up to the crash were all things Marlo herself experienced while suffering from severe sleep deprivation. Her mind had created Tully as a way of coping with everything she could no longer handle on her own. Tully represented the energetic, confident, carefree version of Marlo that had been buried beneath years of exhaustion, motherhood, and responsibility. Later, Tully appears in Marlo's hospital room one final time. She sits beside Marlo and tells her that they can't see each other anymore. Marlo already understands why. Tully reminds her that she was only ever meant to be there temporarily, just long enough to help Marlo get through the worst of it. Marlo asks what she is supposed to do now, and Tully tells her to keep doing what she has always done. Then Tully disappears from the room, leaving Marlo to face her real life again. Drew then returns to Marlo's room and this time he apologizes for not realizing what was happening to her during the nights. He admits that he had been overwhelmed by the baby and his work, and because Marlo had always appeared to be handling everything, he assumed she was fine. He tells her that he loves her, that he loves their family, and that although part of him wants to run away from everything too, he chooses to stay because he loves them. Marlo tells him she loves them too. She then admits that next time, instead of escaping into another world, she wants to be with him. Weeks later, Marlo is back home. She goes to brush Jonah, but he questions whether the procedure is real, and they decide they no longer need to do it. Jonah says his favorite part of it was always just being with his mother, and they hug. Marlo goes to the kitchen and puts in earbuds to listen to music while she prepares the kids' lunches for the next day. Drew comes in, takes one of the earbuds, and helps her while they listen to the music together. The end. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time.